third season. I want to begin my remarks tonight with a disclaimer that there's a spoiler alert coming. There was a movie that came out in 1995, and if you haven't seen it by now, I don't take too much responsibility. It's called The Usual Suspects. Do you remember that movie? Yeah, it was great, right? It was a seemingly simple crime caper mystery that grew enormously complicated with layer upon layer of twists and tricks, and it was about a character named Kaiser Soze. And there was a chatty, unreliable witness named Verbal Kint. And the turn of events at the end of the movie was that Verbal Kint wasn't real, and he was actually Kaiser Soze. The entire movie was one big lie, from beginning to end. It was a box office smash, had critical acclaim, it won 2 Oscars. It's definitely one of my 10 favorite films ever, and when it first came out, I saw it in the theater, and then I went to go see it again. I paid twice to be lied to. An act of deception roped me in for a second viewing. And we love those kind of movies, right? Double Indemnity, the story of War of the Worlds, these entertainment hoaxes, these cons, and we have fun with it. It's escapist and fun. But what about when it's not escapist and fun? Do we actually like being tricked? Are we okay being lied to? If this was real life, we would be what we call a victim. You ever been taken advantage of? Some sort of business transaction or scam that went awry? Lied to by someone you trusted? Read an article, found out that it was totally unreliable? How did it feel when those things became uncovered? If you're like me, it feels like a small part of me dies. There's a disrespect and a breaking of trust and loss. It's just no fun. And humans, we've been doing this for a long time. It's not new. The Torah speaks to it in this week's Parsha. In Parshat Bahar, we're coming towards the end of the book of Leviticus, this Parsha deals essentially with laws of an agrarian society, prohibitions against lifelong slavery, laws of sabbatical and jubilee years, but it also includes a few laws about selling and buying land. And a few of those verses are where I want to focus tonight. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 14 starts like this. And when you make a sale of property to your neighbor, or make a purchase from the hand of your neighbor, you shall not wrong one another. According to the number of years after the Jubilee, you shall purchase from your neighbor. According to the number of years of crops, they shall sell it to you. The more years, the higher the price. The fewer years, the lower the price, because what is being sold is a number of harvests. Verse 17, you shall not wrong one another, but fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. The Torah clearly instructs us not to deceive our fellows. Don't gouge prices. Don't undercharge. Do not wrong another in business. Why? Because I'm God. The Torah is also telling us here to be scrupulous with our words, not to deceive people or defraud them, and not to lie. If the Torah is talking about it, friends, you've heard me say this before, if we're being told not to do it, it's because people were doing it. We wouldn't have needed the instruction otherwise. Al ton hu ish et achiv. You shall not wrong or defraud your brother, one another, your fellow. Can I sidetrack for a totally relevant joke? Okay. This is a joke told by Rabbi Joseph Telushkin. It's a classic. Levine and Schwartz have both relocated to a beachside retirement community in Miami. They're sitting poolside discussing their lives and how they got where they are. Levine says, I used to run a successful business. One day, unfortunately, huge fire. My entire warehouse burned to the ground. I collected $1 million insurance, and here we are. Schwartz nods sympathetically. A similar thing happened to me, he says. I used to run a small store. Last year, unfortunately, the entire thing was flooded because of a hurricane. I collected $1 million as well, and I moved here. Levine says, wonderful. But tell me, how do you start a hurricane? It really works in Florida. Al tonhu, you shall not wrong or defraud one another. Lo tonhu, 3 verses later, you shall not wrong or defraud one another. Why 2 times within 4 verses? Is it possible that we take these simple words as a given? I think we all consider ourselves decent human beings. Why would we need this double reminder? Our sages, our rabbinic sages, of course, speak to this, and they give this wronging, this defrauding a name. It's called ona'ah, wronging or deceiving, sometimes even translated as oppressing. They expand upon these verses, and first they talk about the monetary instructions in Torah. The Mishnah in Baba Metzia says that the rules in this section about not defrauding someone apply not only to the case in Torah, but to any transaction ever. An overcharge or underpayment or the fair value of any article constitutes ona'ah. And it can actually be used as justification to void the entire transaction. The Sifra, the Midrash Halacha of Leviticus, points to ona'ah about the words and the verbal piece of it. And this is where we get the instruction, which you may have heard before, that you're not allowed, you must not remind someone who has repented for their sins of what they used to do. You're not allowed to remind someone who has chosen to convert to Judaism of the way they used to believe. That you're not even allowed to ask for the price of something in a shop unless you potentially might buy it. You can't use words to harm people. There's a cost to it. Just in case you're like, yeah, that doesn't really apply to me. These laws are about, sinners and land purchase. Ibn Ezra, medieval commentator, notes that these 2 verses, he calls them a great equalizer. He says the instruction is given twice because one is directed at the buyer and one is directed at the seller. All of us. And God forbid I forget to bring in Rashi, our greatest commentator. He chimes in with these important words. You are not allowed to belittle anyone. And he also says, don't give someone advice for your benefit rather than for theirs. Rashi then says, he has this phrase, and it makes me think of come on, who would know? Right? If they didn't know, nobody else overheard, I could do it, I could get away with it. Rashi says, no, don't even think that. Because the rest of the verse says, because I'm God. God will know. Our tradition reminds us that verbal mistreatment is not always obvious, and it can be difficult to ascertain the intent of the offender, as the matter is given and comes from the heart of each person, whether it's good or bad, and only they know the intention of what was spoken. But we're reminded by Rashi that God knows. God is privy to the intents of our heart. Ona'ah, oppression, wrongdoing, defrauding, wounding someone with unkind words. I want to go back to the usual suspects for a moment. After what we've just learned, are Bryan Singer, the director, and Christopher McQuarrie, the writer, are they guilty of ona'ah? Have they done this? Our sages think that deception and fraud impacts a society, and that it can be devastating to the foundation and core of the entire societal fabric. They worry that we're going to become desensitized to it and ignore it, and that the result will be inequality and corruption. Inequality and corruption. When I say it like that, it doesn't feel so far away, does it? We see it in our lives today. It manifests in horrific ways. The misinformation and disinformation being circulated on our social media, it doesn't even matter if it's true or not. The other day I was scrolling, doom scrolling as my friend likes to call it, because there's nothing positive ever. And I saw all these posts about the band Pearl Jam. I don't know if you know them or not, but there was this post that they had canceled 3 concerts at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City because their singer's political beliefs didn't align with a controversial speech given by the Kansas City Chiefs kicker, Harrison Butker, at a recent graduation, and that's the stadium where the Chiefs played. It was like 12.2 thousand comments of the most disgusting, vile, hate-filled, ugh. Pearl Jam was never supposed to play the stadium. It was never even on the schedule. Complete disinformation where thousands of people are finding a reason to be angry at each other and divided. It was so disappointing. And we see this surrounding Israel and Gaza and in uninformed slogans on college campuses and in political smear campaigns. Let's just think, without any judgment or political bias, let's just note that the headlines the last few weeks have been about a trial and secretive hush money and lying. That's our headlines. I think the rabbis were right, that ona'ah can really impact a society. A story from the Talmud gives us an important lesson on this topic. It once happened that Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was riding on a donkey alongside a river, feeling very proud of himself, for he had studied a great deal of Torah that day. And he came upon a man who was extremely ugly. That's what it says. The man said, "Shalom, my teacher." Rabbi Elazar did not answer, but rather he said, "Oh, how ugly are you?" Oh, that was pretty like Rodney Dangerfield-y. "How ugly are you? Is everyone in your city as ugly as you?" he asks. The man replies, "I don't know, but you should go tell the craftsmen who made me how ugly the utensil they made is." Rabbi Elazar then realized that he had wronged this man, that he had committed ona'ah. He had dismounted from his donkey and said, "I humble myself before you. Please forgive me." The man said, "No, I will not forgive you until you go to the craftsman who made me and say, how ugly is this utensil that you made?" And of course, the craftsman that is being referred to as God. You could end the story there, but no. The rabbi continues walking behind him until they come to the rabbi's city. And the townspeople all come out with their greetings. "Shalom, Rabbi. Shalom, my teacher. Shalom." And the man says, "Who are you calling my rabbi, my teacher? Who are you wishing peace upon? For if this one is walking behind me is your rabbi, your teacher, I hope that there's no other Jews like him. He did this horrible thing to me." And he told them what the rabbi had said. The people said, okay. Nevertheless, forgive him, for he is a great person of Torah knowledge. And he said to the people, "For your sake, I will forgive him. But don't let him get into the habit of doing things like this." Ona'ah. You shall not wrong or defraud one another, but show reverence for God. Scholar Nechama Leibowitz points out that in this chapter of our Parsha, we find the word amitecha a lot. Your neighbor. She notes that the Torah is reminding us not to see others through the impersonal lens of dollars or shekels, but rather to see each other as members of a community, one common family. I too believe that the Torah is asking us to help create a world where no one takes advantage of another with harmful words or deceit of dollars. A world without ona'ah. And it's simple. We can play a part. We should be the usual suspects. The ones who have honesty in our kosher business and the ones who are speakers of kind words. Shabbat shalom.